At Christmas dinner, my uncle said, "This is who you really are." So I left them a mirror and burned the illusion they called family. Last December, I woke up to that heavy, invisible pressure that always warned me something was wrong. I didn't even make it out of bed before it hit, the kind of dread you don't explain, just absorb. My cousin Blake had been sending me low-effort memes all morning like he was trying to fill a silence none of us were talking about. That alone should have told me this year's Christmas was going to be worse than usual. I'm not new to the outsider role in my family, but this time something was off in a way that didn't feel random. My mother, Dana, had been weirdly helpful in the kitchen, overdoing breakfast like she was starring in a commercial, only she wouldn't look me in the eye. My father, Walt, was glued to his phone, eyes darting like he was waiting for something to drop. Even Harper, the only one who usually threw me a lifeline, seemed distant. She nudged me when I walked in, but then barely spoke. After breakfast, instead of the usual chaotic paper tossing and messy laughing during presents, my mom ordered everyone into a perfect circle like we were about to summon something. No one argued. Everyone sat, as bright with something that wasn't joy. I knew I'd be last. I always was. My mom thrives off control, and this year, she wanted a front row seat. When she handed me the box, I noticed right away it was heavy, but not in a valuable way. The wrapping looked like it had been rushed, creases smashed flat like someone had balled it up and smoothed it back out. I peeled it open in silence, everyone watching, even Blake with his phone already up. It wasn't a gift. Not in any definition of the word. Inside was a mirror cracked, smudged, warped at the corners. Someone had taken a marker and written words all over it. Not clever, not symbolic, just cruel. Failure, freak, disappointment, worthless. It looked like it had been dragged out of a dumpster and then vandalized with intent. My Uncle Calvin stood and shoved it harder toward me, forcing it into my lap like he couldn't wait to make contact. "No point in pretending anymore," he said, loud enough to echo. "This is who you really are." Blake and Cassidy were already recording. I didn't even look at them. I stared down at the mirror, trying to blink away the sudden heat in my eyes. My mother laughed. She laughed. Then she added, "Maybe now you'll finally change." My dad didn't laugh, but he didn't stop it either. Just shook his head and muttered something about being tired of the embarrassment. Harper, bless her, looked like she wanted to speak, maybe stop it. But my mom turned toward her with that dagger glance that shuts people up before words form. So Harper stayed silent, and I just sat there, staring into the mirror that barely reflected me. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. That's what they wanted. Some outburst they could twist into proof that I was unstable, dramatic, too sensitive. Instead, I placed the mirror gently on the floor, stood up slowly, and tried to walk out of the room. Calvin stepped in front of me like a linebacker and said, "Sit down. Don't ruin this for everyone." I looked him in the face, searched for even a flicker of regret. Nothing. Just pride. Like he'd done the family a favor. So, I sat. I sat in that chair, hands clenched in my lap, biting my tongue so hard I tasted blood. The whole room felt like a pressure cooker. My chest was tight, my ears were buzzing, but I said nothing. If I had been even 2 years younger, I might have thrown the mirror at the wall. But I've learned. Outbursts only give them fuel. They toasted me at dinner. I'm not exaggerating. Wine glasses raised, half smiles all around. My mother gave a toast. To finally saying what everyone's been thinking, she said. "May he disappear like he should have years ago." Calvin snorted. Blake tried to high-five him. Cassidy giggled. Harper didn't eat, just pushed food around and glanced at me with guilt behind her eyes. I didn't touch my plate. I just stared at my phone screen, not even reading anything. I just needed somewhere to look that wasn't them. Later that night, I went upstairs and tried calling a friend, but he was with his own family, probably enjoying a real holiday. Downstairs, I heard them laughing. I couldn't tell if it was about me, but honestly, it didn't matter. I sat on my bed, holding that mirror. I tried scrubbing off the marker with a wet towel, but it only smeared. The words looked like they were melting into the glass. And the worst part wasn't the message. It was how unsurprising it was. They'd always treated me like this, just never so openly. When I got sick sophomore year and missed 2 months of school, they barely checked on me. When I left the soccer team, they said I'd wasted my father's time and money. When I got shoved around at school, they said I brought it on myself. When I didn't show emotion, they said I was cold. When I did, they said I was unstable. My mother told me once that I was the reason she couldn't relax in her own home, that I sucked the air out of every room I entered. My Uncle Calvin has been pushing this toughen up crap since I was 11. And Blake, who used to at least pretend to be my friend, follows his lead now, because being cruel is easier than being next. I wanted to scream. I wanted to destroy something. But more than anything, I wanted control. Not revenge, not yet. Just the upper hand. So, around 2 in the morning, I crept downstairs, mirror in hand. I grabbed a Sharpie from the kitchen drawer and wrote in big, thick letters across the back. Nice try. Then I leaned it against the sink in the guest bathroom, right where everyone would see it when they got up. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I lay in bed, watching short videos, trying to push the sound of their laughter out of my head. Around 3:15, I heard arguing through the walls, my parents. My name came up at least twice, then the voices dropped, muffled and low. I didn't care what they were saying. I already knew none of it would be new. Next morning, the tension hung in the air like a smell. Blake bragged about some stupid bet he'd won. Cassidy made herself a smoothie, but neither would look at me. My mom made eggs, just enough for herself and my dad. I made toast and sat down like I belonged there. No one mentioned the mirror until Calvin stomped out of the bathroom and slammed the door. I'm not letting him ruin another holiday, he snapped at my dad. My dad shrugged. My mom rolled her eyes. Harper stared at her plate, jaw tight but still silent. That was it. That was Christmas. But this time, I didn't just take it. I didn't absorb it like usual. I let it settle, kept it close, and made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to wait around hoping they'd change. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to cry in some upstairs room like they expected. I was going to make them regret it, not with drama, not with a tantrum, but methodically, quietly. If they wanted a freak, I'd give them something to be afraid of. And trust me, what I had planned wasn't something they'd forget. After that Christmas disaster, everything inside the house felt stretched, like the air itself was waiting for something else to crack. There wasn't any big blow-up the next morning. No one yelled or demanded answers. But the silence? That was worse. The silence meant they thought they'd won. My mom walked around humming like she hadn't just led a psychological ambush 24 hours earlier. Cassidy was curled up on the couch taking selfies again, already filtering her face into something it wasn't. Blake strutted through the living room like he hadn't filmed my humiliation and sent it to his group chat the night before. Calvin pretended he didn't even remember slamming the bathroom door. Harper kept her distance, which stung more than I expected. She didn't apologize. She didn't check in. She just vanished behind headphones and nods from across the room like we weren't even cousins. The thing is, I could have just ghosted all of them and left. Walked out, no confrontation, no revenge, no effort. That would have been the smarter thing. But when I saw my mother smiling at Cassidy across the table that morning like everything was perfect, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not grief, not sadness, cold, clean anger. That kind of fury doesn't make you cry. It makes you plan. I didn't want to yell. I wanted to show them that the version of me they thought was weak, quiet, and broken could also be patient, precise, and methodical. I wouldn't break plates. I'd pull threads. So I started watching. Not in some exaggerated way, not like I was on edge or twitchy. I just paid attention, like really paid attention. I'd done it all my life without realizing it, absorbing every backhanded comment, every shifting eye, every lie they whispered when they thought I wasn't in the room. This time I listened on purpose. I learned where the pressure points were, what people were hiding, what they really feared, and then I tested it. First move was small. I borrowed Cassidy's phone while she was in the shower. She still hadn't changed her passcode since last summer. 6 digits. Easy. I found the group chat, her, Blake, 2 of their friends from college, and one random girl I didn't recognize. There was the video. Me, unwrapping the mirror, eyes wide, expression frozen like I'd been smacked in the face. They added captions, real-life horror. What a freak. A string of emojis I won't repeat. But what hit harder than their jokes was how casual they made it. Like it wasn't even cruel to them. Just content. I didn't screenshot it to go viral. I'm not stupid. Public humiliation gets sympathy for 5 seconds, then you're old news. I saved it for leverage. Quiet leverage. Power doesn't need to be loud. That next morning at breakfast, I sat down across from Blake and dropped a single sentence without looking up. It's funny how people show their real faces in private chats. He blinked. Then he froze. Cassidy went stiff beside him, clutching her phone like it might start screaming. My mom narrowed her eyes but said nothing, just gave me that warning glare like I was ruining the fantasy. I smiled without showing teeth. I didn't stop there. Blake was obsessed with status. He'd been bragging all week about saving for a new stereo system, how responsible he was, how independent. So at lunch, with Calvin in earshot, I casually said, "Man, I'd pay you back that 50 if you ever paid Marley what you owed him from last spring." Calvin turned. Blake's face collapsed inward, all confidence gone in one blow. He stuttered, then snapped at me. My mom told me to quit being rude. I shrugged and said I was just trying to help remind people of their priorities. Then Cassidy started gushing about her boyfriend, how serious it was, how she might move in with him soon. I asked her, real sweet, "Does mom know about your second credit card? Hope he's not the one covering it." She bolted upstairs. My father frowned and asked what she was hiding. Cassidy didn't come back down for hours. The balance was shifting. I could feel it. I was still the outsider, but now the spotlight wasn't just on me. They were starting to sweat. That night at dinner, Calvin launched into one of his usual sermons about real men, how weakness was a disease, how our generation was soft. I leaned back, said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Yeah, must have been nice when people like you could act like tyrants without anyone pushing back." He turned red, slammed his fork down, told me to show some damn respect. I told him respect isn't something you demand just because you have a louder voice. My mom ordered me to apologize. I asked her if she planned to apologize for letting her brother humiliate me in front of the whole family. She slapped her hand on the table and told me to shut up. Blake tried to shove my chair back. He actually touched it. I stood and said, "Try that again. I dare you." He didn't. No one moved. The air in the room dropped 20 degrees. I sat back down and finished eating. That night, I found my mom rifling through my desk drawers. She jumped when I walked in. I asked what she was looking for. "Contraband," she said, like I was running an illegal operation in a pile of poetry journals and dried-up pens. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stood there until she slammed the drawer shut and told me to get out of her sight. So I did the thing that always shakes them most. I started targeting the money. Not stealing, not lying, just exposing. Cassidy had been using Dad's credit card without permission for weeks. I opened the family laptop, left her browser history open on the screen, just enough for him to see $300 in beauty products and gifts sent to her boyfriend. He yelled. Cassidy denied it. I told Dad, "Check the shipping addresses." He did, all to her name. Her panic smelled like desperation. Then I turned toward Blake. He'd been hitting up Calvin for money, lying to everyone about saving. I waited until lunch with Aunt Nina in the room. She's the one with money. She judges everything. I mentioned Blake's private loans out loud. She raised her eyebrow, asked him how someone saving so much could owe people. He threw his fork down and left the room. Calvin blamed me. I shrugged again and said maybe you should start paying attention to his own kid. Hope was the only one who stayed mostly silent, but she wasn't blind. One night, after Cassidy slammed a door for the 5th time and Calvin ranted about ungrateful boys, Hope looked up from her phone and asked my mom, "Why is it always his fault?" Dana froze. She dragged Hope into the hallway and shouted so loud the light fixture shook. Hope came back with red eyes but didn't back down again. I started noticing her watching me not out of fear, but out of curiosity. Everything was shifting. My dad started taking long calls outside. Aunt Nina was texting nonstop. Calvin started skipping meals and leaving the house more. Cassidy's phone was blowing up, probably trying to control the narrative with her fake influencer friends. Blake was quiet now, no more jokes. My mother? She was unraveling slowly, trying to smile, trying to keep the illusion stitched together. But I saw it. The panic. The realization that maybe this time, the problem child wasn't going to roll over. And this? This was only the beginning. 2 days after I blew up Blake's fantasy football story and left Cassidy sobbing into her overpriced hoodie, my mom called a family meeting like she was a manager conducting a corporate intervention. We'd never done that before. Our family thrives on backhanded remarks and silent punishments. But I guess she thought an official moment might scare me into backing down. We all sat in the living room, tension thick enough to taste. My dad slumped into the recliner like he'd rather be anywhere else. Cassidy scrolled through her phone aggressively, pretending not to care. Blake stared holes into the carpet. Calvin showed up late with coffee and fake authority. Aunt Nina joined by speakerphone from her condo in Dallas like she was presiding over some legal dispute. Harper sat closest to the window, her arms crossed tight. My mom stood there, voice tight with control, eyes scanning the room like she was looking for cracks. She started with how much pressure she'd been under, how family is sacred, how I disrespected everyone in the house and turned Christmas into a circus. I didn't say anything. Not at first. I let her run out of breath, waited for her speech to start circling. When she told me I owed everyone an apology, I leaned forward and asked if she'd ever apologized for that mirror. Silence. Real silence. The kind that makes your heart slow down. I wasn't yelling. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked if calling your son a freak at Christmas was something she thought was normal. She told me to stop being dramatic. I said, maybe you should stop pretending it didn't happen. Calvin tried to interrupt. I cut him off. Told him if he wanted to talk about manhood, maybe he should start by paying his own bills before lecturing others. Aunt Nina finally unmuted herself. She didn't defend me, but she didn't defend them either. She just asked if anyone else had anything to add. My dad stood up without a word and left the room. Cassidy followed him. Blake said nothing. My mom just stood there, stunned. I walked out, calm. That was the thing. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was focused. They thought I was spiraling, but really, I was just clearing space. After that, I started applying pressure in ways they couldn't anticipate. Cassidy had been planning a small gathering at the house, some kind of casual New Year's thing with friends. She told Mom it would be low-key, that she just needed the space for one evening. I heard the whole conversation from the hallway. That night, I casually mentioned to Mom that I'd invited 2 friends over as well. She panicked, told me no, that I was being disruptive, that I was making it harder for Cassidy to have a normal social life. I agreed and said I wouldn't invite anyone. Then, I left a note in Cassidy's friend Marley's coat pocket the next day, asked her about her other socials. Bet she hasn't told you everything. That night Cassidy screamed at me in the hallway, accused me of spying, called me a psycho. She tried to slap me. I ducked. She stumbled, hit her shoulder on the doorframe. My mom came running. Cassidy cried. I stood there completely still, said nothing. Just stared until she backed off. My mom told me I needed therapy. I told her maybe she needed a memory test. Her face turned scarlet, but she didn't hit me. Not this time. From there, it escalated. Dad was still cold and distant, barely speaking to anyone except Harper. He stayed late at work, came home smelling like gasoline and coffee, barely even touched dinner. Blake was quieter now, paranoid almost. I'd catch him checking his phone, glancing at me like I might blow up another secret. Cassidy was full-blown panicking. She changed her lock screen every 2 days, started sleeping with her phone under her pillow like I was going to steal it in the night. I didn't need to. She was cracking all on her own. Then I started leaving notes, nothing threatening. Just questions. Printed words, typed neatly, folded into drawers or coat pockets. Do they know about the missing payments? How long until Nina checks the savings account? Whose name is on that subscription service? The kind of questions that poke holes without providing answers. Mom found one tucked inside her planner. She called me into the kitchen, shaking the paper in my face like it was radioactive. I looked at it, then looked at her, and said, interesting question, right? She screamed at me to stop. I walked out. The next morning, Harper came downstairs with dark circles under her eyes. She didn't speak to anyone, just poured a bowl of cereal and stared out the window. Later that afternoon, she came into my room without knocking, sat on the floor, and asked me straight up what I was planning. I told her I wasn't planning anything. I was just holding up a mirror. She didn't argue. She just nodded and said, "It's working." That night, Dad found a list I'd left on the kitchen table. It was just a breakdown of family spending, actual numbers, itemized. Cassidy's shopping totals. Blake's unpaid debts. Calvin's loans. Nothing was fabricated. All of it sourced from emails, receipts, and open tabs left carelessly on shared devices. I didn't even try to hide it. Dad read it 3 times, then slammed his coffee mug so hard on the table it chipped. Cassidy denied everything. I told him to check timestamps and shipping addresses. He did. The mug cracked more when he set it back down. Cassidy stormed off. Blake blamed me for causing drama, but he was sweating so hard I thought he might pass out. Calvin texted Dad some long defense about how money was complicated and we should all be understanding. Dad didn't respond. Nina did. She asked to see the family finances. That's when Mom really lost it. She accused me of betrayal, said I was tearing the family apart, ruining her relationships, poisoning the house. I told her I wasn't ruining anything. I was just refusing to carry the weight of their lies anymore. She slapped my arm so hard it echoed, told me to get out. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You want me gone? Say it. Say it in front of everyone." She didn't. She just walked away. After New Year's, the house didn't feel like a home anymore, more like a war bunker with everybody sleeping in enemy territory. No one said it out loud, but you could feel it every time someone entered a room and everyone else went quiet. I didn't have to do anything anymore. The damage had been done. All I had to do was sit in it and let the silence speak for me. Mom kept pretending she could fix it all with her version of normal, which meant cleaning countertops aggressively and burning candles that made the air choke. She'd start humming, overcompensating, asking forced questions no one answered. Dad barely came home. Harper spent more time at her best friend's house. Blake was snapping at everyone, especially me, but never directly. Cassidy started locking her bedroom door just to make a statement no one cared about. Calvin stopped showing up altogether after Aunt Nina called him out in front of everyone for still owing her $700 from 2 years ago. It only got worse after that night she demanded to see the family account. Turns out, Mom had been borrowing from the emergency fund for years to cover overspending during holidays, back-to-school shopping sprees, and random purchases she never told anyone about. Dad was furious, and not just in his usual detached, tired way, actually yelling for the first time in years. He demanded passwords, account access, proof of where the money went. Mom tried to spin it, said it was all for the family, but nobody believed her anymore. Cassidy cried. Blake looked like he wanted to punch a wall. Harper just sat at the table with her arms crossed, saying nothing but looking like she wanted to throw up. I said nothing. I didn't need to. That week, I started boxing up some of my things and moving them into the garage, not because I had anywhere to go yet, but because I wanted them to see me preparing. Let the idea sink in. Let them realize I was capable of walking away and taking their illusion of control with me. Mom found the boxes one morning and cornered me in the hallway. She asked where I thought I was going. I told her, somewhere that doesn't reek of denial. She slapped the wall beside my head, told me I was being cruel, that I didn't understand how hard it was to hold everything together. I asked her who she was pretending for. That question shut her up faster than anything else I'd said all month. The next domino fell when Cassidy's friend Marley unfollowed her on every social. One of the girls must have finally connected the dots, maybe from that note I left, maybe from her own creeping suspicion, but it was over. Cassidy lost her entire fake perfect image in less than a day. Suddenly her posts stopped. She deleted her captions. People started texting her less. I heard her sobbing through the wall 2 nights in a row. She tried blaming me, of course, said I'd hacked her account or spread lies. I told her I didn't have to do anything. All I did was nudge the truth closer to the surface. Blake wasn't faring any better. After his lies about money came out, Nina started calling him at random, checking in like a parole officer. She texted Calvin a spreadsheet of everything Blake had borrowed and how much was unaccounted for. Calvin stopped replying. Blake stopped pretending. He came home one night, stood in the kitchen, looked at me dead on, and said, "I hope you're happy." I told him, "Not even close yet." Dad started sleeping at his friend Jeremy's place on the other side of town. He said it was just temporary, but we all knew better. He packed a duffel bag and didn't even look back when he left. Mom freaked out, said he was abandoning the family. He didn't answer her calls for 2 days. When he finally came back to pick up some things, he walked past everyone without saying a word. Cassidy asked if he was staying for dinner. He didn't respond. Harper told her to stop pretending like we weren't all falling apart. Then came the begging. Not from Blake or Cassidy, but from Mom and Aunt Nina. They both started calling me, texting me, asking me to stop, to let things cool down, to remember what family is. Nina used the word cruel, like it was supposed to sting. Mom said I was killing her, that I'd ruined everything. I told her she'd done that all by herself when she wrapped a broken mirror and called it a gift. She told me I was being dramatic again. I laughed. I started documenting everything. Not for revenge, just for insurance. Screenshots, photos, lists, dates. I kept it all on a flash drive tucked inside an old math textbook no one would ever touch. Every time someone tried to pin something on me, I made a note of it. Every time Mom lied about how something started, I pulled out proof. When Cassidy accused me of ruining her friend group, I offered to show Harper the video they posted from Christmas. She shut up. The night before school started again for Harper, she came into my room and sat on the floor like she used to when we were kids. She didn't say much at first. Then she whispered, "Do you think it'll ever be normal again?" I told her normal doesn't exist in a house where love is conditional. She didn't cry. She just nodded and left without closing the door behind her. Later that week, Mom found the receipts. She must have been digging through my closet again, hoping to catch me doing something she could twist. Instead, she found notes about the money she spent, the credit card statements I'd highlighted, the delivery receipts from Cassidy's online shopping spree. She screamed at me, said I was spying. I told her I was keeping track of the truth since no one else could. She threw a vase. It missed me by 2 feet and shattered against the floor. No one came to see what the noise was. No one asked questions. That was the clearest moment of all, when a crash didn't even break the routine. Harper started staying out late every night. Cassidy barely left her room. Blake disappeared for hours without saying where he was going. Mom kept pacing like she was waiting for someone to come save her from the mess she'd made. Nino went silent. Calvin stopped answering texts. Dad called once to say he wouldn't be home for Harper's birthday. Mom tried to act like that was normal too. I looked at her and said, "Even you can't fake your way through this." It happened gradually, the way everything falls apart when no one's holding it together anymore. You expect fire and noise and people screaming across rooms, but that's not how real collapse works. Real collapse is quiet. You start hearing the clock tick louder than the people sitting across from you. You notice doors closing softer, not out of respect, but because no one cares enough to slam them anymore. The house turned into a hollow version of itself, like someone gutted it but forgot to take the furniture. No one spoke unless they absolutely had to. Cassidy stopped trying to prove anything online. Blake stopped talking altogether. Harper came home only to sleep. My mom? She just moved through the rooms like a ghost with nowhere left to haunt. Dad didn't come back. He started sending money directly to Harper's account and only called when he knew Mom wouldn't answer. She pretended it didn't bother her, but I caught her once in the laundry room, crying into one of his shirts she hadn't returned to him yet. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and just didn't care anymore. She wasn't angry now, just hollow, like she couldn't figure out when things actually started unraveling. She'd sit at the kitchen table with a mug she never drank from, staring at nothing like it might eventually explain itself. One night, I came home late and found her sitting on the edge of my bed like she'd been waiting for me. She looked tired, older somehow, like she'd aged 10 years in 2 months. She asked me if we could just go back to the way things used to be. I told her, there's nothing to go back to. That version of us never existed. She reached for my arm like she wanted to hug me. I stepped back before she could touch me. I didn't yell. I didn't push. I just said, "Don't pretend now." She nodded once and left the room. No argument, no door slam, just the quiet shuffle of someone who'd finally run out of scripts. I thought that moment might be the end of it, the last spark. But even broken people have a way of trying to hold on to the pieces that used to give them power. She started texting me the next day like nothing happened. Said she'd made breakfast. Asked if I wanted to sit down with her and Harper. I ignored it. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. When I did walk into the kitchen, Harper didn't even look up from her cereal. Mom tried to start a conversation, something about school and routines and the weather. I stared at her until she stopped mid-sentence. That was the last time she tried small talk with me. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need them to break down in front of me. What I needed was what they never gave me: silence, space, and the freedom to exist without being someone's favorite target. So I stopped answering. When they baited me, I stayed quiet. When they asked questions, I left the room. I started applying to jobs in different cities and told Harper I'd leave her the good headphones when I went. She nodded, didn't ask where or when. She already knew. One afternoon, I came home from a walk and found Cassidy on the front steps, crying into her phone. Her last friend group had kicked her from their shared account. Her boyfriend had ghosted her a week ago. She tried to blame me, asked if I was happy. I told her I didn't feel anything about her life anymore. She said I was heartless. I reminded her of the mirror. She didn't say anything after that. I left 2 weeks later. Didn't make a speech. Didn't announce anything. I just packed my things and took a bus south. Before I walked out the door, I left the mirror in the living room where everyone would see it. I cleaned it, wiped away every cruel word they'd written, and replaced them with one sentence across the center in thick black ink. This is who I never was. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I didn't look back.